month. Someone calls up Gary and the leadership team kind of every 2 weeks. So I kind of get exposed, and when you really get exposed to someone, that's where their true colors usually shine. And the more I've got around him, I got to know him, just the more and more impressed I am with him. So I wanted to kind of make that point, because a lot of what we're going to go through again is just top, things that I've really learned from Gary, or kind of what he's created in our company. And I appreciate the introduction from Shauna, but sometimes, the only reason I usually like to tell my story is like the farthest away from like an egotistical thing, but it's usually, I'm just so proud that I'm just a typical product of what Keller Williams can do for you. My story at the beginning, I got in real estate in 2007 as a brand new agent. I think some of you might have heard my story, but I actually wasn't even committed to being in real estate. I was just going to do it while I was finishing college, and I closed a few transactions and kind of just fell in love with it. But then really like just the person I became by just, embracing everything that Keller Williams has to offer is where a lot of those opportunities came. So I've been with the company, 14 years. So we'll kind of go through the journey a little bit on some of these. These are really the things that I'm wanting to cover. Just thinking bigger, being a student behavior, choosing your profits. We'll kind of go through all these pretty thoroughly. So I really want to make this more of a discussion. If you guys have questions, you want me to drill deeper or whatnot, we'll kind of just get rocking. Fair enough? So who in here has had your real estate license 3 years or longer? Okay, 3 years or under. Okay, about half and half. All right, good. So let's get started. So think bigger. What does think bigger mean to you? You say, everybody says that a little bit, but where's think bigger showing up somewhere in your life? What does think bigger mean? Bigger house, bigger paycheck. Why is thinking bigger important? Yeah.
So you don't limit yourself.
Yeah. And the reason this is number one for me is just, I grew up with just a single mom. We were dirt poor, and just even the environment and the family and whatnot, the mindset I had was just very small, I guess. If you look at the Christensen family history, it's probably the most paycheck to paycheck family tree ever. So that's kind of what I was accustomed to, is just get out of high school and get a job and just go work for 4 years, right? But that was part of it, is just not only the physical things that Keller Williams offered me, but just more than anything, it was an internal growth plan for me of just learning how to think bigger. At the beginning, I would say, oh, it's just so nice to be that person or have that or whatever. And then over time, I started being like, well, why not? Why couldn't I have? And then that why not have start turning into, I'm going to go get it, start turning into action. So just thinking bigger is just really, really important out there. And I'll tell you, I was in this Gary Keller mastermind, it was before COVID, so it's probably 2 years ago. And there's the top 200 rainmakers in the company. So it's just a group of individuals, guys and gals, that do millions and millions and millions of dollars of GCI combined. And I just remember the way that Gary started off the meeting. He just said, look, it's probably the most comfortable environment gets when he's just surrounded by rainmakers, because he feels like they're very equal behavioral matches. They're very entrepreneurial spirited type of people. But I remember Gary specifically saying, you are my equal. He's like, out of all the rooms that I enter, he's like, this is one of the rooms where I feel like everybody in the crowd is my equal. But he's like, I'll tell you the difference of why you're down there and I'm up here is because I think bigger than you. And he just wanted to prove the point that it's not necessarily about the skills or the talents or what we're born with. It's just the commitment to just having, giant thoughts, which in turn, you have to start figuring out how you're going to go get that big of a plan. And it just forces you to develop bigger and bigger habits, right? Like right in the beginning of the MREA, it talks about if you want a $100,000 business, these are the 100,000 habits. You want $1 million business, you got to have $1 million habits, right? So that's part of it, is just, just know that like you've got to think bigger, and again, bigger habits, right? So if you've ever read the MREA, there's really just 9 ways that just top people think. And if you remember these, number 1 is think powered by a big why. Think big goals and big models, and then you see possibilities, action, think without fear, progress, competitively and strategically, think standards, think service. And we could probably spend a whole day diving into one of those thought processes and how a top producer really thinks about that, but just even the collection of them just kind of turns someone into a superstar, right? Our clicking is slow. So how do you guys set goals? How do you personally set goals? Yeah? How do you set goals?
I mean, I know I should probably do 5 years since I was about that, but I was doing it so far. And then I was over here because
Okay, cool. Anybody else?
But, yeah.
Write them down.
I think of the thing I want most when you're on was immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, and just even how I set goals, a lot has to do with how I've been trained at Keller Williams. It's just really thinking out as far as you possibly can. Think your end of your lifetime, think 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and just think gigantic, think big, think bold. What is just something just totally that scares you, or makes you just have butterflies in your stomach or something. And part of that is you've heard the quote before, you overestimate what you can do in 1 year, you underestimate what you can do in 5 years. You could use 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And it really is crazy when you put together just a handful of years with a very committed and hardworking individual, what really is possible out there. I've seen people go from new agents to netting $1 million in 3 years in our company. It's just crazy, right? But that's how I think. So I just think like my grand scheme, like the top, what is my ultimate life goal? And then I usually just work backwards, right? And then you're most likely doing what you said is put chronology timeframes on. Is it a 1 year goals or 3 year goals, 6 month goal or whatever. And then really once you develop what those goals are, the One Thing book has been really helpful for me on just how to do more in less time, or how to just eliminate the tornado of multitasking or craziness or chaos to just really focus on one thing. And I actually do that in all of my areas of life. If you've seen, some of these habits before, but even Gary breaks out his life into 6 main disciplines: self, spiritual, time, money, growth. Even me, I consider there's kind of 7 areas of life out there. And so for me, one of the easy ones to describe is like my big goal for like fitness is I want to be at a certain body percent fat, right? And that basically dictates, all right, that is the one thing that if I could hit, everything else would be easier and necessary, and then I basically backtrack that into habits. They're going to help me accomplish that big goal, right? Could be exercise, nutrition, that type of stuff, right? But here's some of the random habits. Has anybody seen this before? This is in Quantum Leap, the course that Gary created, but just kind of really identifying the right habits that are just going to become part of your lifestyle and internalized is what's going to help lead you to those goals, right? No matter what you want out there, you're probably only just a couple habits of developing habits away from accomplishing that, right? Even time, the playtime habit, the pay time habit, and the organizational time habit. So Gary always recommends, this is what he's internalized in his life, is when he goes to look at his calendar for the next year, he goes out and just blocks off all of his playtime first, right? You probably heard that, but why is that important? What does that do to you mentally or emotionally when you booked all your playtime? Yeah, it's energizing, right? It gives you something to go work for. Like I have totally had my playtime booked out a whole year in advance. And there's other years I've just coasted into without having them on the calendar. And I end up just trying to fit things into my work life versus fitting work into my play life. And I just totally different emotional states that I'm in when I have my playtime pounded out first, right? And it's not just vacations, but it's even on a monthly or weekly basis, because once you have that time blocked, all you have to do besides that is just work, and then you can go to your pay time. But no doubt, I'm a big advocate of work expands the time allowed. So if you don't have clear boundaries, work will just suck up your life, right? And then the pay time habit, that's even just booking your 20%. I think most of you at this point probably identified the handful of things that lead to the majority of results, the 80-20 principle, right? But then the organization time habit, who knows what that is? Sort of. It's mainly about time blocking periods. It's about time blocking a period of time where you're going to basically just do self-reflection, organizational time blocking for some sort of future period of time, right? So for me, every November, I spend a whole day, I call it my retreat, where I go through every area of life and I go through a goal setting process for every single one of those to get really clear on what I'm wanting to accomplish in relationships, health, money, business, or whatever. And then I have my year plan, but then I also do that on a monthly basis. So I usually time block about an hour and a half before the month starts to go somewhere where nobody's going to bug me. And I go review my annual goals. Do I want to keep them? Do I want to change them? Do I have the right habits? Did I forget about some goals or whatever? And then I just have a really solid monthly planning session that just totally makes my month. I'm probably about 80% on it, and it is so drastic, the results that I accomplish when I pre-planned organizational time versus the months I kind of coast into. And then even on a weekly basis, that's where I get more into my time blocking. So every Sunday, maybe a Saturday or something, I have to make sure my entire calendar is totally time blocked, and I put the most important things on there. So I just coast to my week. all of a sudden people are coming at me with what's important to them, but might not necessarily be important to me, and then my week gets sucked in, right? So that's just kind of working backwards to a habit and some examples of that. So that's think bigger, think bigger. So the next one I want to chat about is be a student of behavior. Be a student of behavior. What does that mean for you guys? What does being a student of behavior mean to you? Yeah. What else? Yeah, I think when I got into real estate, I was like naive, and I just thought everybody thought like me or behaved like me or acted like me or whatever. And just the older in life you get, the more you realize how unique you are with your opinions, your perception, your how you naturally behave, or how you adaptively behave or whatever. I'll tell you, being a student of behavior has just blown my mind through Keller Williams. Learning about like the DISC profile, the ABA, the KPA, that type of thing. And learning first and foremost about my own behavior, right? Like the more I understand me, the more real I can get about where I need to do or where I need to compensate or whatever, where I need to bring people into my life to like offload things. But even just when I was team leader for like 9 years, I held thousands of recruiting appointments over a 10-year period. And part of that is fundamentally learning how to connect with someone that is a totally opposite behavior. Like a high driver usually will conflict with a high C behavior, right? And learning how that person might think, or learning the most effective ways how to communicate with that person, has totally meant the difference from me building an empire and not building an empire. Because if you can't learn how to think in different, or put yourself in other people's shoes, or learn how to figure out what behavior fits in the right, spot on the bus or whatever, being a student of behavior has totally been one of the single skill sets that I've developed that I contribute a lot of my business building success to, right? You guys agree with that? How has being a student of behavior affected? Yeah, you as well.
I didn't start into real estate until my middle 50s. And I've learned more in the last 7 years about myself than I did the first 55 years of my life. Just because of all the Keller Williams teachings. And
yeah, totally. Yeah, so even for example, like I have a pretty new team leader down in the Westfield Orem office, right? His name's Tim. Some of you might have met him, but he's been there for about a year, and he is the definition of a high eye. Like he is just skipping around with his cape and loving everybody and telling stories. Like
we have some of those here.
Yes. I tell him to stop talking every other day that I'm around him. But that's also because of who he is, right? Like I've learned how to interact with him, but what I'm personally coaching him and working with him on is some of his naivety that he leads with his high eye, right? So when he finds another high eye, it is just explosions of fireworks, right? He's texting them all day and he's just so excited they want to hang out. But I'll tell you right now, he doesn't know how to like communicate effectively with a high C or a high D or a high S. And so a lot of my coaching appointments the last several months is helping him understand how he's perceived when he shows up with his natural behavior and how he can better connect with, a high, whatever it is, right? Like high Ds, right? They're bottom line people. They don't care about fluff. They don't want to go fishing with you, buddy. Like they don't want to go to lunch. Like they just want you to fundamentally provide them some sort of very quick, short value to their business, right? Or even high I's sometimes forget where they heard stats, and stats just come out of their mouth, right? And if you're talking to a high C who's very accuracy focused, you got to have your references and numbers and data very accurately, because as soon as you start just spewing out numbers, they're going to think you're a joke and not put any credibility into you. Right? So just understanding that, and even running, hundreds and hundreds of team meetings, when I have 100 people in the room, I had to figure out how to give a little to the D's, to the I's, to the S's, to the C's, right? And part of that is we have one of the coolest personality assessments out there is the KPA, Keller Personality Assessment. Who's taken your own KPA? You write this down as an action item, especially you. Get your KPA done. Have Sean order it, Rachel order it, whatever, and even just have them send it to you and just read through it all. Ideally, you have someone actually going through it with you and verifying it. It is quite a bit of time to fully go through someone's KPA when I'm hiring someone. minimum 10 hours to hit the 4 major components. So usually the most important positions in my life, I do not cheat the career visioning process. I walk through every step. Some I might speed up a little bit because it's so much time, but the more you realize the power of that tool. So part of that is it's basically wagering your behavior, the way you think, that type of stuff. And over, thousands of people have taken that, they kind of determine what the ideal behavior is for specific positions in our company. And then it'll match candidates up for that. So it kind of just helps you understand, behaviors. And most intelligent people could probably jump into any role, but it's over time, over burnout, over stress, over pressure, over, bumps in the road is where people's real behavior shines. And that's why when you have people in the wrong roles, when it's going good, it's going good. When it's not, it can get really bad, And understanding what roles and things that you're great at is a good starting point, and then you can start doing it to other people in the organization. And part of that is the team leader role forced me to do these a bunch of times. So start with yourself, but I would challenge every one of you to do it on 10 other people. Do it on your spouse, do it on your family, do it on your clients or whatever, because it's such a powerful learning tool. Before we created the Keller personality assessment, I don't know if you know this, but we exclusively partnered up with a company called Corporate Consulting, and we paid them $7 million a year, Keller Williams did, to have exclusive access to their behavioral assessment processes in the real estate industry. So we kind of monopolized the real estate industry, so none of our competitors could do it, but they worked with all the other industries, major, 500 companies. But anyways, we had the exclusive scenario for 15 years. And eventually this last 5 years is when they just had enough of the data and the money and the power to just totally go create their own, which is even more specifically focused on real estate and how Keller Williams thinks. So really cool tool. That is probably a $30-40 million asset sitting in our company that nobody uses for some reason. It drives me crazy. So even one of the events, it was a leadership only event I went to 3 years ago or something. It was Gary Keller with just top 1,000 agents in the country came to do a mastermind or whatever. And he had an afternoon special Gary Keller session. We all go there. And he literally spent 5 hours role playing with Monica Reynolds, the president of Max Coaching, for 5 hours going through her KPA. Probably the most boring meeting I've ever been to in my entire life because it's so slow. But the whole reason he did this is he just was trying to prove to these fast-paced people that you have to slow down enough to make sure that you're understanding behavior and making right hires. And he was trying to emulate and be the example of that. And part of it's just, a lot of times the more you understand behavior, the more empathetic you are, the more slower I've been to react to, external forces, but even just, how to dig a little bit deeper, it's so cool to see how Gary interviews someone because he's so real and authentic. And he might not even totally know someone, but he might just even start out with a generic question. And then within 3 questions, he's asking the person just pouring their soul out to him because he just understands how to connect with people so deeply and quickly that it's cool. So be a student of behavior. And again, your people, when you hire the right people in the right roles, there is not another asset on the planet that will be as powerful as people. And I love owning real estate. I love owning things that make me money and my money making me money, whatever. But clearly the most amount of wealth I've ever gained was in businesses or scenarios that were great people that I continually invested into. And a lot of people, again, that's one thing I learned from Keller Williams is to be a leader is just, you are there for your people, right? Where other organizations, the people are there for them, which is totally not our culture, right? And again, hire great people and just invest in them. And Boyd, so I partnered up with Boyd a long time ago when he hired me as a team leader for the Westfield office. And that was something I learned from Boyd even is just how willing and open he is to send and pay for coaching and training and events and stuff like that. And it's not cheap to hire people, but the more you pour into them with the right people, it's just 100 times return. So third one, choose your profits wisely. What does that mean? Yeah. Who has kids in here?
I have kids actually in here.
Okay.
He's the only one that has been in here.
So when she was growing up, did you want her to hang out with the best of influences, the worst of influences?
The best.
The best. Why? Why was that important to you as a dad?
Because if you end up being the same result of those people. So they hang around losers and become losers.
Yeah.
I stuck with him, so.
You didn't have a choice.
You know,
Yeah, I no doubt believe that there's, you know, free agency in life and you have your ability to kind of blaze your own trail. And even a lot of my stories about, you know, learning how to grow up and just like, I wanted to go create something big. And I'm so proud of that. But again, I was born in Utah. Like we have an incredible state, an incredible community. I can't be naive, but there was a lot of society that still had some sort of environmental input on me growing up, right? It's not like I was born in, you know, Ghana or something in a village or whatever. Like, no doubt I'm lucky to have the environment I have. But again, it's controlling the environment that, like, when people are so susceptible to the environment, that making sure they got the right influences, right? But for some reason, we might have that high bar for our children, but somewhere in life, we lower that bar for ourselves, you know, and we're not as particular about who we're taking advice from or hearing advice from, right? Like, it's like going to the gym, you know, and have a very overweight trainer. Like, are you really gonna like get wisdom from them? Like even a financial planner, like if your financial planner or someone that's supposed to be coaching you on your wealth isn't willing to show you what their wealth looks like, you're following the wrong person, right? And that's some of the challenge we've got, a lot of the challenge we've got in the real estate industry. It is such a hype industry. It's such a half-truth industry. It's such a, I close 5 deals, but I'm telling people it's 50 deals, you know? And part of that is just our, you know, our industry's been hijacked, you know, even with social media and content, and everybody can start a training program and stuff. Like there's a lot of people paying attention to people that they shouldn't be paying attention to. Right. And one of the things that you said just stuck out to me. I've memorized it ever since. Was if you don't make a profit, you become one. There's a lot of teams out there and a lot of agents that are not making smart business decisions. And as soon as they don't make a profit, right? So there's tons of rainmakers I know that they got obsessed with closed transactions, closed volume, that type of thing. And if you actually went and inspected their budget model, their business, they're probably breaking even or losing money, some of these people, right? There's people that made $5 million last year that are out of the business this year because they just weren't running a profitable business, right? And a lot of times those people, as soon as they recognize there's not a lot of meat on their bone in the organization, instead of looking internally of saying, hey, I made some mistakes, I need to fix my business to get more profitable, they now go out and start being a coach and a trainer, and they start perpetuating the bad habits that they built or the bad models that they built in their systems, right? We've even had some teams leave KW that were definitely profits when in reality, if you inspected their P&L, it was not an example type of business to run, right? You guys know anybody like that? Yep.
They left though.
Yep. Buying $2 million Zillow leads. It's yep, that's a smart decision.
They left.
And then again, what's the most common disease in the real estate industry?
Besides COVID?
Alcoholism.
Alcoholism. That's a close number 2. It's the ego disease. Ego disease, the genius disease, right? And I've just thought like in psychology, I've always tried to like analyze why that is, but like our industry in general, it attracts entrepreneurial, you know, free, independent, you know, like to jump from a steady career or whatever to also jump into a commission-based job. Like we have to be a little crazy, right? All of us are a little crazy. But part of it is I've seen so many people over the years that come in even as newbies, you know, new agents, and they start going out and even making a mediocre level success. They make 100 grand, maybe 200 grand or whatever. And all of a sudden they just feel like they figured it out, right? And they slowly start shutting off their growth and their learning based, you know, behavior. And they start getting into more like they think they've got it all figured out, right? And one of the things Gary always says is, you know, are you successful because of who you are and what you do? Are you successful in spite of who you are or what you do, right? And some of the most talented people that I've seen go into this ego disease phase, like it makes me sad because I'm just like, man, like who knows what your potential is? You could just be incredible. You could be such a big life, but you're purposely choosing to self-sabotage yourself, right? And we're all guilty. I'm guilty of that, right? And again, one of our challenges, our number one challenges with our education calendar is agents reach boredom. An agent is not running their business properly and they are already bored being taught on the subject, right? We get them to come to one class, they're halfway paying attention and they heard it, so they figured it out and now they're just like, they don't need to come back, right? And that's something that I just committed to because I heard that from Gary so early in my career that he says, treat our education calendar like school. You're starting at kindergarten. when you go to the class, and go again the next year, and then first grade, second grade, third, like every major course, I've been to most of those anywhere from 5 to 50 times, depending on what it is, right? And part of it is just as you get older and even get smarter, it might even take a little bit more mental strength to put yourself back in that place of humility and learning base to really do it, to see it. And a lot of times, that's our biggest challenge of leadership, is trying to continually having a world-class training calendar. You guys believe that? Yeah. Some of you might have seen this just as far as choosing your prophets. This is how Gary, the top 5 relationships, how he divides them up. But number 1 is your mentors and role models. That's a process I've been on the last 3 years. I've always been a fan of coaches, but I've been slowly upgrading the caliber of my coaches, as my life's kind of getting bigger, and it just makes my life even bigger, So I have a fantastic wealth coach. I love my health coach. I love my business maps coach. And just kind of making sure that you have, some sort of mentor or role model in there. Eventually you want to get to the point that every area of life, you're paying someone exclusively to coach and hold you accountable. But maybe if you're not there yet, maybe you're just using someone as an example and you're trying to learn about that person, Warren Buffett or whatever, But just always have someone identified and then just have a process of kind of upgrading those. Number 3, your love relationships, spouse, kids, parents, siblings, relatives, even coworkers, right? This is another principle that it's been awesome to learn, but determining who your 5, wealth determiners is, right? I've got a bunch of my net worth tied up in KW Westfield's market center. So no doubt the team leader running that office should be one of my top 5 wealth determiners, and over life. Warren Buffett was interviewed a long time ago, and he is, $60 billion or whatever. He owns hundreds of companies through Berkshire. But he said at one point several years ago that he can trace 80% of his wealth, the whole 20-80%, 20 rule, right? He can trace 80% of his wealth to 5 specific companies. And he's like, it's not just 5 specific companies, it's 5 CEOs. So even him, 80% of his huge wealth came from 5 specific people that ran great companies that just really helped explode his wealth, right? And a lot of times people don't understand that the number 2, the person you determine wealth for, and how important that is. Who is above you and who you're providing wealth for, or multiple people, no doubt is very important, right? I would rather make $100,000 a year working for Gary Keller, because I knew he would just totally pave out a pathway for me to accomplish stuff, than I would $1 million working for Donald Trump or something, because I just know that he's not invested in my personal success. I'm not political, but just saying him as a and then your allied professionals. So this is how I actually look at my 7 areas of life. The 7 on the left is actually out of the One Thing book. And so this is I've changed mine a little bit, but health and vitality is an area of life, mind and meaning, love and relationships, productivity, performance, time, career and business, wealth and lifestyle, leadership and impact. So specifically setting goals and having mentors in all those areas of life is how I think. And again, someone told me this a long time ago, but spending at least 10% of my income in personal development. Having a specific percentage of the income that's coming in on a year basis that you're going to commit to personal development, right? You've heard that 1,000 times. The best investment in the world is in yourself. You should have specific goals around it. And as my income's gone up, I have more of discretionary spending to focus on the growth. So it's not just coaching, but it could be classes, could be anything around that personal development, right? Does anybody have specific goals right now in your development that you want to share? Anybody do any of this? Yeah. You have a fitness coach? Cool. Okay. All right, whatever number we're on, follow the systems and models. Read it again. Follow the systems and models.
No, creativity.
Creativity first.
Yeah.
Who's got a specific example in your real estate business? You might have sort of known the model, but you were not following the model, and what was the outcome for it? Where somewhere in your real estate business, where now that you can look back on it, you were following a model or a system, and the outcome that you had because you were following that model or system.
didn't put away taxes. But I had to pay them.
Yeah.
There's that.
Anybody else?
I'm just like generate. Some of the easy one.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, right? Like, here's just the classic graphic of MRA, but just a stable business model is one that first starts and is focused on the models, and then add creativity to the top of it, right? Whereas the opposite, unstable, is just you start with creativity and try to morph the models into your creative pathway. Right? I see it all the time in team building, specific team building. Like, what's the first hire that you should make when you want to build a real estate team? Easy. Admin. An admin. Why is that important? Or what do people typically hire first? An agent, right? And what are the negative outcomes and why does that happen? Book tells us administrative first.
There's no system in place.
Yep, no system. Why else?
This one.
Well, yeah, like hiring an agent first and not hiring an admin. The book says hire an admin first. A lot of people make the first hire an agent. Why does that happen? And what are the negative outcomes of that?
Well, it just frees up you to be able to do what you do well type thing.
Yeah,
As an agent, you're not necessarily gonna be all the admin duties like that. So you can not pawn it off, but you can pawn it off on someone else that will super focus on that and you can focus on your clients
yeah.
in that process.
Yeah, a lot of times because you start getting more cells or even a mediocre more cells than you can handle. So your immediate thought is like, I need cell support, right? I need to bring someone in to take showings or another agent or whatever. But all of a sudden you just add 2 really busy salespeople now. What starts falling through the cracks? Everything else, right? Your administrative, your customer service, your transaction coordination, your listing management, or whatever. And that's why it's counter intuitive a little bit, but usually an admin, you should be able to, with a really high quality, talented director of operations, you should be able to double the amount of transactions that you're doing as a solo person and still get back a chunk of your life, right? Because they are just taking all the 80% off your plate. Because even when you get 2 salespeople on, right, like you might be focused on 20% and you're trying to pass off each other's 80% or whatever on you, right? So starting with an admin is always the best decision. And then it gives you the foundation, right? Even if you're trying to have a team, they are going to really build a foundation of value for you to then provide to that agent that's coming to your organization. So it's just way more sustainable. I made that mistake the first 2 evolutions to build a team. We hired sales support both times and it failed miserably. And it was finally after the 3rd time that I just was beating my head against the wall, that we looked back at all the money we'd lost because of just like the instability of creating an organization. And we went back to be like, screw all that, we're just going to sell real estate. And it wasn't until we went to go build a team, I'm like, we are not making a single decision unless that red book tells us to. And ever since then, our team has just consistently grown every year. So, and part of it is, this isn't just like Gary be like, oh, I think this would be good. I think this would be good, right? Like he's just going out and researching what is the best models to build a real estate team. And then after thousands of people, like he put it into a book, right? And you got to do that in all these other areas of life too, right? Figure out what your models are. You should have a mind map model, just document where you're starting to lay out what the models that you're developing in life. And then once you start having a base level set of models in all your areas of life, all you're doing when you gather new information is either unvalidating or validating that that's the right model, right? Even as a team leader, when I would coach and consult our agents, like hundreds of agents in appointments with me would come with some random lead generation idea. And they'd say, hey, like, what do you think about putting my face on shopping carts? Like, what do you think about, I'm going to farm this area. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, will you hurry and just explain what your 36 touch program is to your database? And almost every time they were running their database at 36 touch at like a 4, 5, 6, 7. And I just say, you are not allowed to ever bring this back up until you have your 36 touch 100%. Because there's no better way to build a sustainable business than having 36 touch, right? Even if you meet, a bunch of people from your shopping cart face, like, where are you going to dump them into, right? You're just thinking small and not long. But again, like the industry with technology and all these, false prophets and all that other sort of stuff, it's just our attention span is attracted to just newness or new ideas or cool squirrels or whatever, right? You just have to stay focused. You just have to make sure you're staying along. So even the budget model, it seems old school to follow budgets, but no doubt sticking to specific categories of expenses and cost of sale and stuff like that, you have to do that. Right? Just the fact that we have step-by-step org chart paths is just incredible, right? It's just follow the model. You don't have to go reinvent the wheel. Okay, hold yourself accountable. Do not settle. I feel like there is just kind of a theme going on the last like 5 years. I think technology is, been a part of it, but I think in general, a lot of real estate agents are just trying to get out doing the work. I think part of it is just like we have to have a higher bar or threshold of holding ourselves accountable to just go out and work hard, right? The purpose of a goal is not necessarily about achieving the goal as it is to set the plan. The value of a goal is if you accept the goal, then you have to set the plan to achieve the goal, right? It comes back to having written goals, like absolutely. It's not even just about the energy that comes from setting a goal. But once you've totally dedicated and committed yourself to that goal, it forces you then to go have a plan, right? And even inside of Keller Williams, which is one of the most goal setting and trained, groups of agents in the industry, there's still a good percentage of our company that don't roll into the next year with a clear goal, let alone an actual GPS or a business plan for the business. And that's why that organizational time, again, is so effective for me, because it just really helps me like have a clear vision of where I want to go before I get into it, right? Grow disruptively, not organically. What does that mean, you guys? How does business growth usually happen? Word of mouth. Is it this? This line? This is
So you're waiting.
no, it's a hockey puck. Yeah, maybe it's more like. One of the ways that I heard that, which makes a lot of sense to me, is the kind of the stairs method, right? Part of it's just like a lot of times when any of my organizations grow, it kind of almost like pops, like there's like a sprint or just like a accumulation effect or something that kind of just like takes us to a whole nother level. But over time, it really exposes our systems, our people, our models, our customer experience, whatever it is. And we start seeing some sort of ceiling of achievement, right? And there's phases of my life that's just kind of felt like I'm just like taking care or just flatlining or whatever. And that's part of it, because just life doesn't just consistently always predictably or organically grow. Some people might just slowly organically grow, but a lot of times it comes from just like periods of time where you have to re-identify something disruptive in your business that just propels you to a new set of growth, right? Like a lot of times I identify these points. Like if you ever feel like you're on this trajectory, it's because it's a lack of you identifying what is the next disruption point that's going to propel you to that next level of success. So what does that disruption look like? What do you think that disruption could even look like in a real estate business? Homie? Yeah, no doubt. Like Homie, EXP, like they've been growing in a disruptive path, right? Yep, and each time, like they're going to get to the same point that we have for the last 20 years. They're going to hit a point that they're going to have to totally reinvent their company one way or another to take it to that next level, right? And even if you look at the real estate industry, Gary's been saying this the whole last 2 years, but he says no one has ever stayed number one in the real estate business ever. Like even back, 15 years ago, whatever, the number one company on the planet was Century 21, right? The Gold Jacket, C21 was all around the planet. They were the typical kind of dependent traditional real estate company, that really just crushed the planet. And then came along Remax, right? Remax came on, they were a lot more of an independent, maybe a lower fee, monthly fee type of thing. They quickly, and they were really aggressive expanding outside of the United States too. They became number one, right? And Keller Williams was really born out of that craziness time of even the evolution of going to C21 and Remax and stuff like that, because we basically kind of created the interdependent model, which is a kind of a marriage of the best of both worlds of dependent, independent, whatever. But Gary is very clear, very clear. He's like, nobody ever stays number one. So either A, we could get kicked off number one as in the industry across the planet, or we have to really reinvent ourselves to become the new model of what the new number one's going to look like. Otherwise, someone else is going to get there before us. So he is just such a maverick, and he is just top down reinventing our company, and it's rattling some of the people that don't think like that, and it's just energy for the other people that do, right? So even real estate business wise, some people think some things are disruptive, but they're not. Like specifically training, coaching aren't disruptive. Like anybody can train, coach, just collection of content, value, whatever. You have to think bigger than that. And even some of the things that Gary's working on right now, Keller Mortgage, like having our own mortgage company, our own insurance company, having a bundled service, whatever, right? Keller Offers, like actually like buy on demand, sell on demand. Like that is a disruption piece that's kind of creeping up in the marketplace. Technology, no doubt disruptive, no doubt disruptive. Profit share, even expansion or whatever, right? When I think about these types of my teams, so we'll probably be on pace for 500 transactions this year. So we're already at 240 closed and under contract, the Red Sign team is. And one of it is we hit kind of the same production level for about 3 years, which was about 300 transactions. And I just was like so angry because I just always expect us to kind of to grow, but we kind of just flatlined. And so I started having to think disruptively, and clearly like new construction was one of the first that came to my mind. Like, how do I go out and totally disrupt our team and bring a whole nother level of new construction? So as part of it, I had to become someone new. So me and my partner went back and got our master's of real estate development to start thinking in creation and thinking in development. But also we had to bring on some expense. We hired some new construction coaches or whatever. And part of our 500 transactions, 200 of them are going to be new construction coaches that we've added to our teams. So I'm like, all right, that's going to be good. That got us to a whole nother level. Obviously want to keep that division inside of our team going. But I'm like, what is the next like major disruptive component that could just totally propel us to another 1,000, 2,000 transactions or whatever? And for us, I think our team, like just truly building one of the best like internal sales divisions ever that is just consistently setting appointments for agents, no doubt would be disruptive. There's a lot of teams that have tried it. I'm like, if we can figure that out, that every person on our team every week got 3 new buyer and seller appointments, like that would just change our organization. Because a lot of teams, they go try to find the agents and they think the transactions are going to naturally come. That is not the model of the real estate business. The real estate business is go get the transactions and the agents will come. If I had 100 transactions to give to agents right now, because we just have more deals than we had, how easy would it be for me to find a bunch of agents? Of course easy, right? And that's part of it is you got to think like your real estate business, you want to grow, what can you do that's disruption? Think disruptively, don't think organically, right? GK, and that's really the year that we're in right now. 2021 is the year of disruption, right? Like where we're at with our technology, the entire reorganization of KWX, like even the potential of us maybe going public or not going public, like, buying some other companies, whatever, like Gary is out to win the Super Bowl this year, and there will be more change this year than there ever has inside of our company in 30 years, right? But we have to be so aggressive on that disruption to change and reinvent ourselves. Otherwise, we just have to accept the fact that we're going to slip to 2, 3, 4th position or whatever, right? And I'll tell you one thing I know about Gary, he just does not lose. He will bet the farm to win the Super Bowl for sure. So again, that's what I'm even trying to get, a disruption component that I think is going to grow my real estate team is what if my value proposition to agents was really never lead generate again? Go make as much money as you want and you'll never have to lead generate again. Like if I could build a team like that, would that be incredibly disruptive in the business? Sure, right? But I've had to realign my focus from sales agents to building out the most awesome hub ever. We're kind of on that journey right now. Focus on seller listings. That sounds so simple, right? Why do we focus on seller listings?
It's leverage. You can do a lot more listings than you can with buyers. Yeah, number one, your listing is market for you as well. So typically you're supposed to get 2 buyers on the 1 listing.
Yeah.
So it brings in 3 transactions versus just 1.
So it's a sweet lead generation tool for sure. On average, regardless of the market, it usually takes less time invested into it, right? I also think it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to systematize. Like it's a lot more control over process. You know, when we launch our listing, you know, intake process, like it's very predictable how, when, you know, why it's all going to happen, right? But then again, you know, it's just more controllable. It's more controllable of a business, right? Like for us to go out and predictably go get 30 buyer appointments versus 30 listing appointments, like it's a lot easier to kind of easily predict the income that's going to come out of those, you know, taken listings, right? So why do people not do it? So easy to hear that, but what do we do that isn't actually like authentically doing it?
Sometimes we do a follow-up, you know, you ask the sellers are open up to the regular follow up.
Yep.
I guess buyers come easier when you're new, I think.
Yeah. They just might be a little easier to get maybe because the sellers are gonna like skill check you a little bit more, experience check you, right?
Yeah.
For me, I think number one step you just have to focus on. What you focus on expands, right? Every step of my life, when I start changing the way I focus, it forced me to start changing around it, right? So like if you're truly saying, I'm only gonna go generate seller listings, and then I inspect your business, and you're sending nothing out to your database but buyer marketing, and your Facebook and your Google leads are trying to attract buyer leads, you're clearly not being authentic with what you're saying, right? You're trying to attract buyers. So there's several evolutions where we cut every dollar that we spend on buyer attraction and only spend money on seller attraction. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves to go back to it because organically we just start adding crap into our business that does it. But even I just think it's a discipline, right? Like I think in this marketplace, the amount of time you spend on a seller even and the amount of time you spend on a buyer is probably somewhat equivalent. It's just at what point in the stage are you spending the time on it, right? So if a buyer is kind of reactively attracted into your life, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to get that dang person under contract, you know, showing houses, writing offers on 92, you know, offers on one house, blah, 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 things falling out, appraisal issues or whatever, right? But in this market, getting a listing right now is pretty close to a done deal on getting a paycheck, right? Like it's getting bid up, you're winning, like the sellers think you're awesome. And that might be little time spent into it. But really, if you would have spent the actual time we generating to get sellers, you're going to spend way more time up front getting that seller than you would a buyer, but you're just doing more of the work once you have the buyer versus less time, right? It's just being proactive or reactive. And part of it is if you're in a reactive business right now, your business is bringing you buyers or control on where you're going to spend your time. But it's the agents that truly time block seller lead generation, and they will not let anything get in their way. Those are the few people that are actually have a seller focused business, right? Because a lot of us will say, oh, I want to go get some sellers. I'm going to call for a seller listing, I'm going to prospect, visible, expire, whatever. And all of a sudden your buyer wants to show houses. So you scrap your time block of lead gen to go show them houses, or whatever, right? I just think it's being very authentic on time blocking seller lead generation. And we were in a class once, and we specifically asked this question because I was just curious. I raised my hand, I'm like, Gary, I'm like, everything you know about the business, if you were just to get plopped down in some random city, you know, Denver, Phoenix, Seattle, or whatever, and you had to start square one with everything you know, but you had to do the work to go build a business in the area, what would you do? He's like, he thought for legit 5 seconds, he's like, I'll tell you. He's like, if I got plopped in an area, he's like, I would do what, he's like, I'd go mark a circle or a square around a very small micro market, like a farm, right? He would do a little bit of research that has good price points, good turnover, you know, some of the statistics that make that a great farm, which some of our people don't do that. Like Highland City, for example, in Utah County, I had this agent come to me and they're like, I'm going to crush Highland City. I'm going to market, blah, blah, blah. He pre-bought like 2 years of postcards. He was mailing them to everybody. And it wasn't until he was like 13 months in with 0 listings. He's like, what the heck's going on? I'm like, have you checked the turnover of that city? And he went and did the turnover of Lehigh City and Highland City. Lehigh City at that point was like 3 years. People live in their homes for average 3 years. Highland, people move in with intention of never leaving. Their average turnover was like 13 years. So I'm like, clearly, if you're gonna spend the money, like, where do you want to do it? But again, he was just thought it was just, oh, this cool market, there's a higher purchase price, whatever, but those are only just components of one, some of the equation. But anyways, so Gary said he would just pick the perfect farm in that city, do a little research for a couple of weeks. He'd pick the area and he would just farm the heck out of it. He would knock doors, he'd signs up. He's like, I would do whatever it took to get one flag in the ground. He's like, he told us this, he's like, even if I had to get them to sign an NDA and I listed a home for free, he was like, I would do it. And as soon as I had the listing, I would tell everybody I had the listing, I would sell it, I'd tell everybody I sold it, and I would just keep beating that neighborhood until I got the next one, the next one, the next one. And then by nature, it would just turn into a great database. And he's like, I bet I can make $1 million GCI in 1 year by just going all in on one territory. And sometimes we just cast our net so wide that we're missing the point of being hyper local focused, real estate agent. So just a tidbit that he said. And again, the path is in the math. The path is in the math. I'll say that 15 times a day. How many seller leads will you generate that will turn into into listings that sell? You have to know your number. You have to know your conversion ratio. What is your goal? Simply backtrack it all exclusively with seller listings. And all right, right now, do you have enough leads to that when closed in your current system would lead to net you $1 million? Like, do you have enough leads right now in your system that if you just followed up, blah, 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 could it close and turn into $1 million? If not, you just gotta go get more leads, right? There's really only two problems in the business. I have more leads than I can handle. I don't have enough leads, right? And sometimes people complicate their issues in real estate. Either go get more leads or just do better converting the business you have, right? A lot of people, their database, they just totally neglect their database. They spend thousands of dollars and hours and hours and hours trying to go create this lead gen strategy that if they just invest in a fraction of that consistently and discipline and persistently in their business, totally awesome, totally awesome. Path is in the math. Everything in life has a number attached to it. Everything that matters has a number attached to it. Every agent needs to find their math. It's all just a math equation, right? Which is the economic model, which is the very first model in the MREA. You have to just simply know your numbers. And I could go to a lot of our top agents and I would say, hey, explain the economic model, and they would just dance all over the place trying to describe it, right? Economic is simply just doing the math of the path of how to go build a great business and close it, right? Who, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being you know your path and your math, 1 being what does either of those words mean, where would you say you're at right now on knowing the numbers needed to hit your goals and whatnot in the business? Yep. Yep. What's your transaction goal this year? 30? How many appointments do you have to set this year, per week, per month, per year, whatever, that leads to that? Do you know? Yeah, I think as command keeps growing, like hopefully it does it all for us, but even just spreadsheets, tracking numbers, you got to do it because it just gives you so much ammo. Because even conversion ratios, you got one conversion ratio that's out of model, focusing better on just tightening up that conversion ratio makes way more sense than trying to just dump more business or leads or whatever into your business, right? It's a lot of even strategic changes that have a bigger impact than big total shifts or switches, right? All right, KW technology adoption.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yep.
So just getting started, day one,
Mhm.
what would be realistic goals for the set?
Yeah, so for me, like minimum is 100,000 income that I have a goal for any new agent comes business. Like anybody realistically can go make 100 grand. You know, we've had several people that come in, and I think 30 transactions, 3 a month your first year can be very realistic. It's just the commitment level that you're willing to put into it. But again, the first thing that I would always tell people when they got in, the first thing you got to do is just not only education, learn how to sell real estate, but you just have to organize your database. Like minimum, get to 200 people. Get their name, phone number, email, address, and then just mark it a 36 touch. 3 times a month, you have something going to them, talking to them, an event or something, and you might not have the total MREA perfect, ratios because it takes a little time to brand yourself as a realtor. But again, 200 people should bring you about 33 transactions out of your business. Times up by $10,000, $330,000. Just 1 year, $330,000 income just off simply having a database of 200 people. If you don't have 200 people, you're new to Utah, whatever, you better go do the Gary Keller strategy. You better go get to 200 people that you can put in a database and have a real relationship with very, very quickly. And even that, the more our technology, which leads us into our technology, right? Like app and having a better digital value that we give to our consumer, it's going to be more and more easy for us to predictively like predict the amount of closed transactions that should be systematically coming out of a certain amount of database, right? Like even the value of one person in your database is hundreds of thousands of dollars in a lifetime, right? They just become your realtor for life, or you're their realtor for life. But again, even just like having people connected to the app in the future and digital transaction, all that stuff, that's where we're trying to get, is just trying to have that great consumer digital process, which is going to probably put less of a burden on agents to have to kind of like jump in and send recipes and all the stuff that we do, right? But again, yeah, KW technology adoption. Where are you guys at on KW technology right now? Somebody in command using command as your database? Yeah.
I got a contact somewhere now.
Yeah, we're really going through that. You probably have heard from your leadership. We're going through that 66-day stability challenge. Like we're about halfway through it, and they've made drastic bug debugging things. So we're monitoring that, but I still think command's probably like a 7.5. So we use it for a lot of our components, but like where we'll be probably by the end of the year is just going to be a game changer for us, right? And part of it, people just don't understand why we're trying to do what we're doing with technology, right? Like why are we, what is the race or the real battle technologically in our industry right now? AI?
I think the real race right now is like Zillow, Redfin, and Homey, and all those others right now.
Yeah, AI is a piece of it for sure. But what's the goal of it?
The goal of AI is to be
What's the goal of
above
technology?
everybody else.
What does that mean?
To have technology better.
You're trying to get yourself in front of something.
Yeah. Who listens to Spotify? Who has a Spotify app on the phone?
We're all
Don't speak for yourself.
So there's like if you know anything about the movie industry, like like some of the technology we have right now, it was just like wild west, right? Like where songs were and how they got all published and whatnot. But you look at like Spotify's company alone, which Apple Music maybe is equivalent, or Google or whatever, but even just Spotify, like there is millions and millions of songs out there, different distributors, who owns the rights, how they're getting paid or whatever. Like to collect every song on the planet and feed it into one app, like can you imagine the work that it took to do that? And now add podcasts, right? Just all the great educational podcasts on there. They're even doing audio books, now they have profiles on there. Like, but the app alone, you have in your hand just a very slick technology app that you can access all of this very easily, slick, ease of transaction, all that sort of stuff, right? Like they clearly revolutionized the music industry. What other industries have done that with a single app? Amazon, right? Who buys something on Amazon? Yes.
Yeah.
Somehow there's like 4 charges per day when I do my accounting at the end of the month on Amazon, right? But they've revolutionized things. Like we were, I can't remember what we were fighting. Me and my wife were fighting about charging cords or something because the kids keep losing them somehow. So I'm like, fine. So I ordered like 10, it was like a Saturday night. I ordered 10 iPhone cords, just not Apple ones because they're like $80 each, but like normal iPhone cords. Literally the next day at 11 a.m. on Sunday, they were on my porch. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, Amazon just revolutionized it, right? And now you can look at Uber and, DoorDash and stuff like that. Like it's just crazy. I click a button and anything I can imagine just shows up at my door, right?
Uber's probably not one of that.
Uber, gigantic, right? Like, what did we do before Uber? I don't know. Like, even when because I had to go to Austin quite a bit before COVID, and I just did experience like every other time I do a taxi, every time I do Uber, and just, man, the customer service and the quality of taxis is just
a better experience.
The drivers don't give a shit about you. They drive like a bat out of hell, like their car stinks. Like one guy dropped me off at a hotel, it was a new hotel. And I'm like, I don't think this hotel is, yeah, this hotel, get out. I'm like, I don't think this is. He's like, yeah, get out. So I get out, I walk in, and they're like, no, this is the wrong bear. I'm like, a-hole, and he'd already zipped off, and I have no way of like leaving a bad review. I don't know his name, anything, right? But like the quality that it created, the pricing and all that, it was just crazy. Let alone cars drive themselves, right?
Yeah.
So with that same concept in mind, what are we truly trying to accomplish technologically in the real estate industry? Yeah, it's all about the consumer experience. Like we are trying to get the easiest bundled service transactional process in the real estate world. Like you think about, just step out of our like biased opinion as real estate agents, the typical person buying a house, our industry is awful. it's fractionalized. They're in like 100 different systems. Like think about, they start with a mortgage process, then you got to jump into like, all right, we got title, all the buyer, the agents processes, like inspectors, even after they own the property, like even to get their home maintained, appraisals, all that sort of stuff. Like we haven't been awesome at being front edge of the technology revolution. And that's what it is. That's why we went from like hundreds of millions of dollars dumping in the technology industry to literally like 40-50 billion dollars this year has already been dumped into real estate technology, because the race is who can develop the technology that is just going to blow the consumer away, like Amazon and Spotify and some of these other industries did, right? Like we want to get the buyer and seller to be able to do anything they want when it comes to buyers and sellers. I mean, buying houses, managing houses, investment properties, refinancing, getting insurance, inspecting, whatever, right? And that's the real race, right? And again, I think we're positioned very well to win that race. Why? Because we're profitable, we're number one, we have some of the best leadership in the world, and just a few more $1 billion. Like I really feel like Gary's just going to nail the technology things, right? If we don't do it, who do we become held hostage to?
No.
Whoever does it, right? Zillow, Redfin, yeah, right. Like you look at even the Wall Street, right? Like we're pretty much the last big company left that hasn't filed to go public, right? You look at like Rheology, which is a Coldwell Banker, Better Homes, C21, whatever. Their valuation of a traditional brokerage management company, because they're viewed as the old school traditional brokerage, right? They did about $6 billion in commissions last year. And their valuation on Wall Street right now is $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion, which is 0.25 of 1 year of revenue. That's the valuation they're giving traditional real estate brokerages. Whereas Zillow, right? Zillow, for example, they are getting viewed as a technology company. Their valuation is like 35 billion. They're like 10 to 15 times valuation of their revenue, right? So even just valuing the planet right now, like technology-based companies clearly are just 100 times more valuable, right? And that's why even Compass, right? Compass just recently filed to go public. And if you know Compass's strategy, like they're smart, like their CEO is a cool, smart guy. He kind of reminds me like a young Gary, to be honest. But they have just been attracting series after series after series of fundraising, and they're trying to like tell these investors that they're a technology company. And they're taking that money, they're building some technology. They're nowhere near farther than us on technology. And it's just more like cool looking shiz than it actually is functional technology. So they tried to go public as if they were a technology company, and Wall Street's getting a lot smarter the last couple of years, having this happen a bunch, and they just got slammed on their IPO. They just tanked immediately. Compass, they've been targeting luxury markets. So they're one of our competitors for sure, but they're just not in the state of Utah. But they lost $270 million last year. They've lost $1.1 billion in the last 4 years. Or no, because they're taking all this series funding and they're basically going out and buying up market shares. They're buying brokerages, they're buying teams, right? And they're spending a lot of money to try to acquire into the market share. Because the race is either you build a technology faster that will bring the market share over, or you build the technology and deploy it to your market share, like is our strategy. And then we'll just for sure be one, right? But again, Compass, they didn't have either. So they're trying to build a technology and buy up the market share at the same time. But tell me if it's a good idea or not to buy agents in this industry. No, we're like the least loyal industry on the planet, right? So buy agents, that's a poor investment for sure. And that's what they've seen. They'll go spend, $500,000 on a small brokerage in Seattle, and then 3 weeks later, they've all left the company. Like buying us does not attract people that much. So what makes our app different? Are you guys using the consumer app right now? So that part of it is like, we're trying to just create the best customer experience in general, but we're also trying to build something that's different than everybody else, right? And one of them is even the neighborhoods. Like Zillow, a lot of those websites out there are Google Maps based, which there's like 17,000 neighborhoods in the United States on Google Maps. And that's why we exclusively partnered up with Nextdoor, basically to get all their data, because they're really neighborhood focused. There's like 170,000 neighborhoods in that, because we believe, our belief system is real estate is really, really local, right? This condo complex over here, a block over, could be a whole different environment, right? Location's a big deal to us, and we understood that, right? And again, the difference of our technology is like just what you said. We have a base layer of our Keller cloud, and we have Kelly, our artificial intelligence. that we're putting all these different software programs on top of it. Like the contact module in Command is just one of like hundreds of software programs we're trying to put onto it. So it's not just about going out and making a great contact management software, because if that's all it was, it'd be easy. But how do you get that contact module on the platform to communicate effectively with everything else? Because that's a challenge we've been having. We thought we could go a little bit faster, but even where we're at right now, as soon as we, flip on the lights in our living room, it turns on the sprinklers outside. So we got to figure out how to do that, right? And it just takes time. And that's why even where we're at right now, we're 3, maybe even 4 years ahead of the vast majority of the traditional competition. That's why we personally don't really view EXP, Coldwell Banker, Remax as our traditional competition, because we just feel like they're so far behind us at understanding and having the base level of foundation of data collection and AI and all that in there. That's why for us, we feel like maybe Redfin, Compass, Zillow clearly are more of our real competitors in the next 5 years. Even though still little battles going on in every market and everybody's fighting over taking each other. But again, Gary's focused on the bigger vision that once we nail that, it's checkmate position for our company. And even that marketplace, right? Like your iPhone, like who has an iPhone? I don't want to talk to anybody else.
I'm the smart one group.
Like what would the value of your iPhone be if the only apps allowed on your iPhone were Apple produced apps? Like it would take my usability of my phone down to like 5%, right? So even having Google and Gmail and some of these apps on our iPhone makes our iPhone more valuable, right? And that's why the race also is to get to that platform that has the most market share, the most eyeballs or whatever, but fast enough. And that's why we've already rolled out our marketplace. That's going to get really cool over the next 6 months. It's allowed every other company to plug in to our platform. But again, it's our platform. We have control of it. We own the data. We own the destiny of our future. But having some of these companies plug into it so we can use that applet inside of Command, it's just going to get really, really cool. We're basically turning ourselves into the Apple of the real estate industry.
So out of curiosity, where .Booth is on Zillow, why would we allow them into our database?
So we were contractually already in a relationship with .Loop before Zillow purchased them.
Right.
So when Zillow purchased them, we automatically just got bought, but they still had to honor our contract. And basically what happened is it's all for us. What's most important is who owns the data. Who owns the data? What are you going to do with it, right? Anything we get Zillow, do you think they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to come back to Eden and make sure she got that buyer lead when she stopped paying? No, she's going to sell it to the next person that they're going to, right? So that's part of it is .Loop. They had to abide by our data pledge and our data collection policies and stuff like that. And that's why, if you remember, it's a little rocky, our .Loop to DocuSign transition, it happened so quickly because they basically called our bluff. They said, hey, our contract's expiring. We've got you over a barrel, Keller Williams. Like either you abide by this new contract agreement, which means we own your data, or we're going to cut service off. And we said, hey, we cannot put our company in that position. We're going to move off of you. And we had like a 60-day period to work out the agreement with DocuSign for them to abide by it. And that's why it happened so fast and whatnot. So even now, they now can plug into our marketplace, but it is only plugging in, abiding by our terms and conditions and data pledge. So that's part of it is anybody that shows up in our, like, it's just like Apple, right? Apple's in this giant, they'll kick apps off. They'll, they're in lawsuits all the time because they control the monopoly of who's in that app store and how that works, right? And that's part of it. It's a control factor because would you rather have Zillow on our data or do you want our company on the data, right? And that part of it is Zillow is just, they've just got so heavily funded. They're just going out and buying up the #1 software program in that space. Like Showing Time was the most recent one, right? And what's happening is it's forcing us to either create our own product or it's forcing us to go to the B-level product, which is still okay because there's a lot of great B-level projects out there, but that's also what's potentially leading us to just totally go a different direction. And you might have heard this or not, but one of the decisions we're going to make is whether we should go public. And that's probably going to come this year, some sort of solution, because at the end of the day, we net profit more money, Reology, Zillow, Redfin, all of those companies combined. Like we live business owner principles. Gary no doubt eats his own pudding, right? We are the #1 market share holder, right? I think we have the best leadership at any real estate company out there. Like I interact with them over and over and over, and I'm just continuing to impress with the top people in our company, how awesome they are. And the fact that they keep adding more and more, like they're even upgrading college players to NBA players right now at KWX. So they're bringing in people, I don't know how expensive it is, but it's getting a lot of money for Gary to attract this talent. But the difference between us and a Zillow or even a Compass or whatever is they have billions of dollars because they are just raising debt after debt after debt to do that. So we were never considered public or bringing on debt or whatever if we didn't have to, but we're probably at a point that we need to really speed up to crush our competition to add some money. So I think that's one of the decisions that Gary's making right now is, do I issue some sort of private offering inside of our company? Do I actually go public? Do we actually look at issuing some bonds or bringing on debt? Because Gary's so efficient with dollars. Like you look at the principles that abide by our market center financials, like sweet little Rachel literally is just a policy follower of just hundreds of policy because we just use every dollar the agents give us out of their splits so effectively, right? That's why we have an incredible profit share system. But part of that is just imagine what our technology and our company would look like if Gary had $10 billion right now. Like it'd just be crazy.
So that would be the advantage of to go public, is that he can get cash
Yep.
to do things right away.
Yep, it's a money play. It's a money play and it's a little bit of a publicity play, you know?
How does that affect the company if you did do that stuff?
Yeah, I thought through this a ton the last 6 months. We've had internal conversations with the leadership, you know, it's not something like we want to like just put out there in the world because it might not happen. But as I thought through it, I think it could only be possible. Because number one, there's two ways of going public. There's giving up control and there's not giving up control, right? Like Steve Jobs, when he started going public and brought on more money and board of directors or whatever, at the end of the day, he ended up with like 8 to 10% voting right or something. And you know the Apple story, Apple kicked Steve Jobs out of his own company that he started, right? He goes out, starts Pixar or DreamWorks or whatever what it was, and then they end up bringing him back in and he turned the company around because there was a hard spot that Apple got into. And they brought Steve back in and he took it a different level, right? But again, he lost control of his company. He just wasn't sophisticated enough to understand what was going on. Or even you look at Facebook, right? Like Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg only owns like 20-something% of Facebook, which is he's a multi-billionaire. But the one thing that's unique with him is he has 51% voting right. No matter what the board of directors say, no matter what the shareholders say, no matter what happens, their company is contractually obligated that he has, at the end of the day, all decision-making power. Like Mark Zuckerberg is one of the most powerful people on the planet, right? And that's why there's so much pressure and some like, you know, conversations, even the whole Trump, you know, the Facebook oversight committee was voting whether we're going to let Trump back in or not. Like it's just a dog and pony show. So at the end of the day, Mark is the only one that makes the decision, right? He just tried to pass the negative publicity on to someone else versus himself. So that's something I know about Gary. Gary would never give up control, never give up control, right? So that's one that makes me confident. But even number two, like our company is gigantic. We're almost at 200,000 associates, you know, and at the end of the day, like that is a lot of pressure and responsibility and burden on Gary. And he just continually impresses us. He's like, what, 63, 64 now, but he just continually, every 3 or 4 years, step back in and just blow it up to get us back on the right path. But part of it is just, you know, the bigger we get, like going public, there's just so many like infrastructure, SEC, there's just so many other things out there that just probably could ease the burden of him having to lead everything because it's so regulated, right? And that's also, the other thing is just, you know, being a private secret company, and we've always had a challenge at telling our own story because we're just a group of humble, cool people for the most part, that even going public sometimes tells our story for us, right? And that was one thing that Compass happened is Wall Street, they have their magnifying glasses when you want to go public, right? So like when Compass went public, they are going through every little nook and cranny of Compass and start weeding out. Like one of my old buddies, Jimmy Rex, the Jimmy Rex team, right? He invested in one of his buddies' companies called Nikolai. It's like that hydrogen-based, like kind of Tesla competitor or whatever. And he got in and actually was able to buy some stock, restricted stock or something like that. He ended up going public. He put $500,000 into the company, ends up going public, and anything with the word future attached to a company, technology, self-driving cars, whatever, like Wall Street just has been going crazy on it, right? So the valuation, as soon as they went public, his stock shares just soared. And at the very top, right after they went public, his shares were worth $25 million. $25 million, crazy. And I was in a softball tournament with him. I'm like, dude, I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, I have no idea. He's like, it's so weird. And what happened is, the magnifying glass came out and they started looking through every nook and cranny of that company. And just one thing after another led to just, poor leadership. They misreported this, the truck wasn't out driving, they were actually towing it in the video, or there was some sexual allegations about the CEO and stuff like that. And his shares went from like 25 million down to 3 million, which, 3 million is still $3 million. Because like, that's the worst $20 million I've ever lost in my life, right? So part of that is for me, I'm like, a lot of companies have been propped up by the stock market, our competitors, with this like mediocre of a foundation they have. I'm like, we go public and you get the whole world peeking in our back corners. I am just so comfortable with that happening with Keller Williams because we just have such solid integrity and good systems and good people all over the planet that I'm like, man, that is only going to make us look more awesome, right? But at the end of the day, it's EXP, Real, some of these companies that are issuing stock, like it's kind of triggering a little bit of our, agents' wealth building buttons. Profit share gives out more money than any other company, like by a landslide. But for some reason, like we just suck at talking about profit share, that everybody thinks it's less than rev share or any of these other companies. So they're good at telling their story, but I think the public could help potentially do that. But just imagine if 190,000 agents could actually own some shares of the company they work for. That's just cool, right? So I'm pretty optimistic about it, but yeah.
Is that why he's trying to move it into more of a technology company and not a real estate company? I mean, because the IPO would be worth a lot more as a technology company than a real estate company, correct?
Yeah, I honestly think maybe other than Zillow, Redfin's got some cool consumer stuff. We're easily in the top 3 technology-owned companies right now. But even if we went public right now, I just don't think we would get the credit for that because we're just not good at screaming it. And we just got to get a little bit farther down the road. So for me, even if we go public and is this being recorded? Probably cut this, for me, even is if we even get valued as a traditional real estate brokerage with how awesome a foundation we have, and then we actually just ride the journey the next 3 or 4 years to the technology company valuation, I'm like, that is just a gigantic wealth opportunity for our company for sure.
The difference is Gary's not crazy and Glenn at Christensen is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's the part that scares me.
Yeah. Yeah, Gary just has her back. But Gary's worth over $1 billion, right? Like the dude could have retired so long ago and just stepped back and let that come in. But I don't know why, he just does not care about money. Like he's just the weirdest guy. Like it's about winning the race and doing the best he can, blah, 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 from all his teachings. And I'm like, $1 billion. I'm like, when are you just gonna sit on a beach, But he's in meetings.
He reminds me a lot of Warren Buffett because of that.
Oh yeah.
Warren Buffett, like money was the scorecard.
Yeah.
He didn't care about it.
And he just cares about real estate agents. He cares about our industry so deep. Like he literally will have realtor on his gravestone. That's one of his commitments, I'm like, man, does $1 billion ever make you just want to care less? I'm like, I might be vulnerable to that. I don't know. So yeah, so it's just we've got the leadership, we've got the power. I'm just like the people that are leading our company right now, I just think are idiot jackasses. I'm like, I have no idea. Like they're so focused on the short game and they do not see how we're positioned for the long game. Right. But some are just so self-absorbed that I'm like, yeah, get out of here because I don't want you sharing on that wealth. Sorry, that was money chill, but that is very relevant right now.
That's what I really thought.
I know, don't.
Yeah, I've said yes to a lot of stuff, and my commitment this year was to say no to everything, just so I could go deeper into what I have in my life. But I'm viewing the KW, if they do decide that, I think it could be one of the biggest wealth building moments of my lifetime to just try to buy a bunch of stocks. Like, because if it could even be close to what happened with my buddy Jimmy, right? Like 40x return, you can put 100 grand in and it turns into what, $4 million. It's just crazy. Yeah.
And then
Yeah. Then we'll retire. Which leads us right into some wealth building. The last couple I've got are all money based for me. Pay yourself first. Like this is in every financial education out there, but maybe 1% of people on the planet do it. Why? Why do we not pay ourselves first?
More, what they say, more money than a paycheck.
Yeah. Who pays themselves first? Who has a habit of every dime that comes into your bank account, you have a certain percent that you set aside solely for investing or saving purposes? Who does that? One? Right? Why does everybody else not do it?
Took class like last week.
Each learned, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's just, you're just fighting against so much human behavior. Like, I don't think I'm different than anybody else. Like, if money hits my personal bank account, somehow magically it is not there anymore at the end of the month, right? And part of it is just, it's such a slow lifestyle creep. As you make more money, just lifestyle creeps up so much, you know, and that's something that I'm so glad I did from very early on in my career. Was I was in actually a partnership. So me and my partner Clay Winder own our team together. So we would sell real estate, blah, 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 but our money would come into a joint LLC bank account. So we knew the only money that could come out of there is for expenses for our team, and whatever's left over is what was profit, right? But we made a commitment probably like 6 months into our real estate business, which we're still not selling that many houses, but we dedicated, we started with just 15%. We eventually got up to 30%, but every transaction that came into our bank account, before we'd even pay expenses with it, we would just immediately transfer 15% over to another bank account, which was our like rental property investment fund, which as she read at the beginning, it's our Red Side Investment Company now. Which, you know, at the beginning, like $1,000 here, $800 here or whatever. And we bought our first rental property at $5,000 down and we had to move into it or whatever, but it just started snowballing for us. And the only reason that like I contribute a lot of my wealth and momentum that we have was from just starting with that simple procedure as a partnership, right? But had I just been in an individual business, that money would have came in my bank account and it would have disappeared, most likely, right? So even just setting my life up simply with a bank account, transferred off, and then it went into my spending bank account. We do that at Keller Williams. All the money gets deposited into what's called a commission deposit account. So the millions of dollars that come in almost every single month, dump into a commission account. And at the beginning of every single month, the MCAs are required to have a predetermined budgeted amount of 50, 100,000, whatever it takes to run that market center. They transfer it over and there is no variances. Like the MCA needs to be precise on what goes over there. And then that becomes their expenses. And that's the procedure every single month, right? Which some of you probably read some of the books, like Profit First is a good book that talks about that. But just totally paying yourself first is super important. So right here, again, this is right out of the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Investment spending is black, income taxes gray, and white for required spending discretionary. This is a millionaire investor. Any millionaire I know, most likely this is one of the key attributes they have is they dedicate a portion of their income, every single dollar that comes in, to going out to investing, right? It's a pretty decent number. It might start out 5%, but Gary's is a 30%. Live off 70, 30% should go to your investment bucket. At the beginning, you might save some money, put your reserves up, but hopefully once you cross whatever your reserve threshold is, 30% is just going straight into investing, right? An investor budget is a little bit more like this. Not only are they saving for taxes, but they're carving out a little piece, maybe 5 or 10%, right? But the vast majority of people, that's their consumer budget. If there's any money left over at the end of the month, that's what goes to saving or investing. But the vast reality time, there's no money left over if you don't do it the first of the month, right? So again, if you look at just even entity and your world structure, I always love talking about the left and the right side of my world. So the left side is ordinary income. My main entity is an S corporation. The reason I have an S corporation is because all the money flows in. I pay a bunch of expenses out of that. Like my personal S corp is the coolest company to work on the planet. Like the benefits I get, everything. It pays for my Spotify, my phone, my cars, my trips. You wanted to make sure that you're reasonably deducting anything you can out of that. And whatever the net income's left over, you can pay a little bit through payroll and a lot of it through distributions, right? It saves a bunch of money on taxes. But on the left side, that's business income, commissions, flips, or whatever. And over 10 years, a lot of financial planners, accountants, lawyers, and stuff, this is how I've separated my life. On the right side is all my long-term asset holding stuff. So I have another LLC on the right side, that's my investment. So it's only long-term capital gains, like even developments. If it's under a year, I do it on the left side, but it's usually purely owning real estate, right? And if I own it long-term, even 2 or 3 years, it's still on that side. But every dollar for the last 10 years of my life that I've moved over, I've never touched it. I never came back out of that to live my lifestyle, right? And that's part of it is we have a lot of real estate agents that are making great money right now, and they're going to have nothing to show for it after this, boom of the real estate market. And the way you do that is just by systematically every deal or whatever, saving some money. I know that sounds super simple, but I want everybody to raise their hand. Raise your hand. Say aye and say your name.
I, Shane,
commit to saving
commit to saving
whatever percent you choose
5%
on every single real estate transaction the rest of my life.
on every single real estate transaction.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you. So even, and then once you go beyond this in your investment world, so I own, on the left side, I own, I don't know, pieces or a good chunk of like 10 other businesses. Like she mentioned, I have a 25% stake in the country of Argentina. So I'm the master franchise for Keller Williams, a quarter of that I own my office, even my real estate team. All of the businesses that I own that are just making money, are all owned and flow into my S corp. Okay, so all of this, so even my ownership from my Keller Williams dividends or whatever, when we close the books as an ORKW, just files right into my S corp. So the only way I ever receive money is through that S corp. But it's also entity and liability, protection by stacking them a little bit like that. But again, I have another like 5 or 6 LLCs that I own properties or commercial buildings or whatever with partners that my ownership in those other LLCs are all owned by this original investment LLC. Cool. And then both of those, no doubt, upon death, will all just naturally flow into a trust. You don't have a trust set up yet. That's where your life should flow. Somebody set up like that already?
As a S
You have a family trust for me?
No problem. Yeah, I was just on a call. Gary did a wealth preservation mastermind with a bunch of the top rainmakers and stuff, and he went. It's just crazy how every meeting he can just keep going a layer deeper than I thought he could go. But he spent about an hour specifically on the irrevocable trust. There's 2 types of trust. There's revocable. So basically upon death, all my stuff just dumps into that, but it's always revocable and I can make any changes I want, that type of thing as far as I'm alive. So that's how my stuff's set up right now is if me and my wife died, everything just rolls into the trust. And then I dictate clearly where it all goes, who gets it, how the kids get it or whatever, right? How much goes to charity, blah, blah, blah. An irrevocable trust is one of the most tax awesome entities ever, but irrevocable is the opposite. Once you create an irrevocable trust, it's very difficult to make money or move money or whatever out of that, right? A lot of times you have to set up a board that they get a vote what happens to it because you're totally giving up control of it. But what happens is when you move assets or things into an irrevocable trust, and then you assign your kid or whatever as a beneficiary of that, that asset keeps growing over 10, 30, 50 years or whatever, and they never have to actually deal with the estate tax, right? The estate tax is when you have a bunch of money, you die, the federal government can take anywhere from 40 to 65% of your estate above a certain threshold, which Trump kicked it up to 11 million, but Biden wants to break down to somewhere around 3 million. So anything, even life insurance, any of that beyond 3 million, half of it just disappears from the go, right? Whereas an irrevocable, being strategic early in life, on putting certain big assets in irrevocable trust, totally alleviates, taxation on, when it passes from one generation to another. It's crazy. A lot of super wealthy people were smart early on in their life to do that. Like Sam Walton. Sam Walton's a perfect definition, right? Like Warren Buffett dies right now. He's already committed to donating to charity, but same Warren Buffett wanted to leave his $70 billion to his kids. He'd be the perfect example where the state tax would just crush, right? Like 30, 40 billion dollars would just disappear in just a simple taxation of it, right? Passing on to his heirs. But inheriting $20 billion, we could probably still deal with it, right? But Sam Walton, who created Walmart, the Walton family is one of the, if not the richest families in the history of the planet, right? Like when he died, instantly, those 5 kids or whatever were all 50 billionaires. Like the Walton wealth right now is like $200-300 billion, right? But part of that is Sam Walton got advice from his father-in-law very early in life and actually proportioned shares for his children in irrevocable trust for them. And when the company became hundreds of billions of dollars, when he died, they already had their irrevocable trust and not a single dollar disappeared in estate tax. It's crazy. Like it would have been $100 billion. It was $100 billion expense had he not actually used the tool of irrevocable trust. So a lot of people just wait too long in life before they do that because they wait for their assets to appreciate. So it's crazy. 2 kinds of capital: human capital and then capital assets. Where you work for money or your money works for you. only two ways of getting money, right? And then that money dumps in as cash flow, your income, and there's only four things you can do for it. Spend, donate, save, and invest. Besides the government taking some, right? And you just have to have very clear percentage points of where you want your money to go. If you don't have a plan for your money, someone else does, right? And understanding that and proportioning it around there. Have a written wealth building plan. It's not a business plan, a wealth building plan. Who has a written wealth building plan? Who has a balance sheet they look at and update their net worth often? Yeah. How often do you do it? Once a week. How often do you do it? Realtors again.
Before. Not there. No, you're awesome, that's why.
So have a written wealth building plan. So everyone
gonna be dead.
will be a millionaire sometime.
Oh, yeah.
That's what this class is. We're giving out $1 million. You put $100 in a totally crappy savings account of 0.001% interest or whatever. Eventually, that $100 will turn into $1 million, right? But the likelihood of you being dead before it gets there is way more probable. That's more of like the 500-year plan, right? To become a millionaire in this country is so easy, but it's just what length of plan are you on, right? Back to that think bigger habits or whatever. Are you on a 10-year plan? Are you on a 30-year plan? Or are you on the 8,000-year plan, right? Just pick your plan and then have your plan and then just systematically update it, change it, whatever, right? And that's, I'll tell you, that is one of the biggest principles. I don't even know where it clicked in my head to start doing it, but I physically can't remember the last time at the end of the month that I didn't do my personal profit and loss statement that brings all my companies together and my personal balance sheet updating my network. I've done it every month, minimum 10 years. The last 120 months, I'm 100% batting average. Because I'll tell you, it just like, it started out as like a forced habit I had to build. And I'll tell you, my balance sheet was not cool to look at right when I first started, right? Like there was a lot of negatives on there. But part of it is I just had to condition myself to do it. And once I did that, a lot of people might generally know their budget or where the money's going or kind of where it's not. But even historically, just at the end of the month, track where your expenses are so you at least know where your money's going. So many times it'll be like, what's your budget every month? Like $5 grand. I can live off $5 grand. I'm like, well, how much do you live off? Oh, it's probably around $5 grand. Like, well, show me your bank account. I'm like, you're spending 12 grand a month. I'm like, there's no way you're following it. But it's a lot of times because you just don't know the reality of where your money's going. Simply just track your expenses, right? And once you kind of do that, now just have a plan before the month starts for your money, right? And then just stick to it. But balance sheet is way less used for some reason. Like, and it's been so helpful in the decisions I make. Because some decisions I make might be positive on my budget and some might be positive on my balance sheet. Sometimes they're positive on both. You know, a lot of times it's just a balance sheet discussion and it's still always going to end up being a right income decision, right? But even a balance sheet, all you're doing is you're just adding up all your assets. It could be a simple spreadsheet. All your assets minus all your liabilities equals your net worth, right? And once you get that set up, like we tease her, but it probably takes her just, you know, maybe 10 minutes. It's very, once it's built to maintain it, it's pretty simple. Like I have a bunch of companies all flow together and my, you know, transactions, my wife's credit card has tons of transactions on it, but my balance sheet, like I'm down to maybe 30 minutes to just totally close all my books and get all the numbers accurate. It just might be several hours to kind of get it set up as you do it, but just this is one habit you just have to do. Can money make you happier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
She can buy things that make you happy.
Absolutely.
Well, this is for the people that say money can't buy happiness, because I think it can, right?
Yeah.
Number one, spend it on others, right? That makes me happy. Spend it on experiences and even buy back your time. Like, that is so important to me. Like that is a big tool that I am motivated big with money, is just getting back my time for sure. Okay, and I think this is the last one, but streams of income are the secret to wealth building. You've got to have your day job, right? But very few people on the planet get rich from one thing, right? Maybe if you're Jeff Bezos or whatever. Bitcoin. But part of it is just having multiple streams of income, right? And real estate is, that is really where I fell in love with the real estate industry, is when I just fully realized the width at how many opportunities exist in real estate cohesively by just doing your day job, right? And even us, as we go closer to this bundled services, you've seen even in our offices, we've started rolling out some strategic alliance opportunities, insurance and stuff like that. I think those are no doubt opportunities, like profit share. I've been in the profit share, I have a profit share income stream, right? Like owning real estate and have passive income from that. Like just take advantage of all of them and have a little business plan for them, right? Like if you're not actively trying to add people to your profit share, like you're wasting a potential stream of income, right? If you don't jump into some of these strategic alliances, or if you're not owning rentals, or if you don't have, whatever, like streams of income, no doubt are the secret sauce, right? And at the beginning, 100% of the money you need to survive every month, you're probably working for that, right? Like you're swapping your time for dollars, and then that pays your bills. But eventually you want to start having a goal of what percent of your monthly lifestyle are coming from money, earning money, right? And it might start out 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, but the people that this clicks with, that says, I want enough money, net worth, streams of income, whatever, that whether I showed up that year or not, it 100% pays for the lifestyle I desire, right? That should be all of our goal. And so often people just do not have a wealth building plan written down that is giving them chronological bumps of where they need to be, when they need to be to accomplish it, right? Who has a very clear passive income goal? What is it?
I just want all my rentals to make all my money. I don't do anything. It's my goal.
Anybody else have one? What's your number? Passive income. What is it? What's the number you want to get to? 250?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else?
Oh, no.
15 rental properties,
15 rentals?
maybe that all pay for it.
No.
Yeah, the way I did this, is I kind of had my my base need budget, like how much just to survive, how much I need to survive and make me half happy, and then like what's my dream budget? If I drive where I want, live where I want, travel where I want, eat what I want, blah blah blah, right? Like what is my dream budget? And I just reverse these numbers and set them as my wealth building plan benchmarks, as I want to get my passive income to minimum meet my needs, right? And then, all right, pay for half the sum of it, and then what my dream budget is. So I'm very clear on what my number is, and then that is just my lifetime passive income goal. I just want to accomplish it as fast as I can, right? My actual number that's on my dream budget, I have $66,000 a month. 66, but that's like vacation rentals, I got my cars, like everything. Yeah.
Not 65.
66. I got 66.
Like, where's that extra 12 grand a year?
I wanted a jet membership.
Okay.
To own a jet, no yachts, whatever, but I'm like, time for me is important. So even if I can just like go to a closer airport and jump on and fly whenever I travel. So I even like reverse engineer my travel budget, car budget or whatever, But the vast majority of it, like even $250,000 of passive income is an incredible life. You can virtually, until you get in jets and yachts and like multiple mansions or something, like, 20 grand a month definitely is awesome. See?
Oh, yeah, I'm on it.
Which that's the one weird thing to me about Gary Keller. Gary Keller he has so much money, so he's so smart with his money, but like he's just so salt of the earth. Like one of the last family reunions I had before COVID, I ran into him at the Southwest line, just lining up for his flight. And I'm like, how do you not have,
Have you seen Josh Stern's camper?
Yes.
He travels
Oh, yeah.
months on end.
Yes.
It's a piece of shit truck with its piece of
It's
shit
not a
camper
piece of
on
shit.
that.
I'm sure 2020.
I swear, have you not seen it? It is, it's just a little, yeah.
Yeah, he's such an outdoors guy. Like even moving to Alaska for this summer, like.
No, he's getting ready to leave again.
Yeah, he's moving up
Yeah, he's
to,
going to Alaska.
forgot the cool city that he's gonna live in. He's gonna spend 4 months up there, but it's not like a house, like it's just this little cool shack thing, but he's just so all about the experience of what's outside the walls, which is
I
great.
believe his wife is too.
Yeah. But Josh is a great example of like, he figured out who he was and what life he wanted to live, and he just ran 1,000,000 miles an hour to get to that passive income number so fast.
You just did a class last week that was amazing about that same thing,
Oh, cool.
about high yield, high yield savings accounts and how to do this and how to, just what he did.
Yeah. Yeah, and he just had a clear goal of getting to whatever 10, 12 paid off rentals as fast as he could, because that would just meet his passive income goals, right? Some of us, like fancy shoes or something, so you might have to have bigger home. I'm not a fancy shoe guy. This is gonna make me sound old, but like, I do feel like we've got a bunch of young, like hungry rock stars in our office. But one of the commonalities I feel like is they're just all like obsessed with fancy brands.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just because it's a different generation and they grow up just so public, social media and all that. Yeah, it's almost like created a weird bar for them.
Well, a lot of them are going, I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My favorite, we used to get houses, they're good mine.
Yep. Get your passive income, you can buy whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yep. Just don't buy it until you get there. That's what I say. Okay, and then I'll just show you this. This is Linda and Jim McKissick. I don't know if you know them. They're like the poster. They get put up on a pedestal for profit share alone because they make over $1 million in profit share. But they are the classic case example of just multiple streams of income. They came into Keller Williams and just took advantage of every income stream they possibly could, and they made a very great business plan for all of them. So they own a couple offices. They still have a real estate team that they've stepped out of. They own pieces of a couple regions. They've got several developments going on right now. They still have their flipping company that flips houses. Anyone they don't want to keep, they'll just flip. They own well over, this is outdated, but they own well over like 130 rentals, single family rentals, and they start getting more commercial stuff. They own commercial buildings right there. Their profit share alone is incredible. But even what they've been working on the last 5 years is all their intellectual property stuff, speaking, strategy, books, website. Like
Is she the one that started the Keller Williams in South Africa?
No, that's Althea Osborne.
Oh, okay.
So she was just on vacation and just took one day out of her, South Africa vacation, or whatever. She's like, I'm just going to go call a handful of real estate offices and just meet them and talk about Keller Williams, because we were just entering KW Worldwide. And she met with a couple people, and one person's like, yeah, I'd be interested. And she just connected in the KW Worldwide department, ended up being the guy that launched the country. So she doesn't.
Everybody in South Africa is underneath the Keller property.
Yeah. She has.
She started.
Yeah. So there's a difference between profit share and gross share. So profit share is at the end of the month, market centers say we make $100,000 in this office in 1 month. Half goes to the others, half dumps into that profit share pool. You have a tree, and it can be spread all around the country. Gross share is outside of the United States and Canada, which is what KW Worldwide runs. And it actually is revenue share, so it's off the top. So they don't have a royalty cap outside the United States. So our 6% caps at 3,000. Theirs is 8%. Royalty doesn't cap, but then 2% of the 8% is just ongoing gross share. And the reason they structured it like that is just the challenge that we have outside the United States. Like we just are really blessed with a very organized and ethical economic situation. Anywhere outside the United States, corruption, lying, politics, all that, like we just couldn't trust the integrity of profit sharing in a lot of these countries. Even our profit share system here, the first couple of years started out as rev share. And then eventually when we have the structure and integrity and all that, we converted to profit share, which is what teaches people to be business owners. Rev share teaches you to be salespeople. So by nature, a lot of these countries will eventually convert to profit share. But yeah, so like Argentina, because I met a guy, got lucky, worldwide, blah, blah, blah. So I connected him and he knew someone down in Argentina. We launched the country. And instead of me just focusing just on gross share, I actually chose to invest into the country. So I put up a bunch of money to own part of it. But yeah, Argentina for me is. So
that whole country's under you?
Yep.
Ooh, yeah.
We're still in launch. Well, and I heard those stories. We only have 50 countries open, but like, I thought it was just like, man, that would be so cool, so lucky, Althea so smart, whatever, and like, just do the stuff. Yeah, you just never know. Like, it was definitely lucky for me. Like, I met the right guy that knew the right people, we launched it, blah, blah, blah. But like, you just never know what can happen. And there's a lot of huge countries not open yet. And all we're missing is the leader. They don't care really that much about money. Like they've got to have some money, but they have to be like a rock star that's going to be the leader that grows chemicals for that country. So
If you don't believe in miracles, you'll never get.
yeah. So it's cool, but yeah, I could grow fast. South Africa, I don't know how many agents. They might be at like 1,000 agents, but we just got to grow the country. So like Argentina, we're at like 400-ish agents. We got 8 offices, averaging about 50 agent count. But I'll probably make 12 grand this year on gross share just from the country. But again, yeah, if we go to 30,000 agents, that alone could be something awesome.
Well, Please
There's
Stern
that
makes
$1,000
like,
month.
Please Stern makes like $35,000 a year.
Yeah, she's made like $500,000 the last 12 years or something. I told them the last. But even Gary, it's a chapter out of Gary's playbook. So if you know Gary's main company, this is his like kind of investment company called Keller Capital. He's just run the same playbook. He just saves most of his money, invests it immediately. KWRI is just one of his big investments, but he owns all sorts of stuff. I don't know if you knew he was one of the early. He was one of the early investors in Stan Socks, which went pretty big. I can't imagine what his thing was in there. But he's got some very financial strategic investment. This is, I'm sure, a fraction of what he's got. But a lot of what he started getting into is fortifying his lifestyle. So there was a smoothie shop right around from his house that was going to go out of business because the landlord was going to jack up their rent. And it's a place he gets a smoothie at every single morning. And once he found that out, he's like, I am not letting that happen. I want my smoothies. He bought the building. He gave him discounted rent to protect the smoothie.
That's what I would like to do.
Right.
Yeah. So Alamo Draft House. You guys know what Alamo Draft House is? It's one of the last movie theaters in the country that you can sit down, something in case you're ordering, order a beer and food and eat right there in the movie theater. And it was just a nostalgic thing for him that he loved going there, and it was starting to go out of business. So it's like, all right, so he bought it. Knowing Gary, you can turn anything into successful business again. So they're up to like 12 theater chains. Probably didn't do good in Corona, but like it was doing really good before that. The hotel, Milk and Honey, yeah, Finish Line, all that sort of stuff. What's Finish? I don't know if he did his health story. He was, I don't even know what the disease was, but he was diagnosed with something in his like middle 30s that basically the doctor told him that he had no solution around it, that he was gonna have to wear like a pee bag the rest of his life, like strapped to his hip or something. And he was just chronically in pain in his legs and stuff like that. It was some weird, totally like random disease that he just like, that was a point in his life that he just committed to being like the health guru or whatever. And he changed his diet, his habits, all this. So when you get into his health area of life and the models and the systems he runs by, it's just, you could spend hours listening to it. It's just awesome. But Milk and Honey has something to do with one of his health, companies. Like there's pros and cons. Like every time I go to KWRI and they like feed the regional directors, it's always like, what's the little grainy quinoa? Like it's just like quinoa. It's like all weird food that I'm like, just get us a burger, Gary. Yeah. They don't have treats, like they just always have their little baskets of, fruit and stuff. Like the KWR is really, really healthy actually. So
What's the Finish Line?
that has something to do with like a clothing line or something. I don't know. Yeah, just Gary is one of those guys. He's so obsessed with making things successful. He just can't get anything without turning it successful. It's crazy. So he's got several full-time people now that work for his capital company. He's got Mitch. If you go to killercapital.com, you can see some leadership on it. But he's to the point that he just has professionals just all day, every day looking for more opportunities for him and just buying stuff and blah, blah, blah. So there they are. That's what we just journeyed through. No ascending order, but top 11. Think bigger all the way down the streams of income, the secret wealth building. Cool.
Yeah.
Was that helpful? I want to hear some ahas or nuggets. What's one thing that maybe you pulled out of that you're going to go turn into some sort of action? Start up here.
I think you're my goal.
Write your goals down. Okay.
What are we doing?
What's one aha? What's something you're going to go turn into action?
Probably writing down a written budget and personal balance sheet.
Cool.
Save out of every question.
Yes.
The budget sheet. Not. And actually, I do like what I do what you say, like, as soon as I get it, I get rid of it. So it's not that I don't do it, I just pay things, like, I just call people, get it, just get it out of my bank account, or else I'll spend it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Even like the board, I call them like, they're like, can I pay my dues? They're like, go away. And it's like, no, I wanna give you my money, like whatever it takes. And they're like, just come back in April. I'm like, it won't be there in April, guaranteed.
Yep. Yeah, even start a little like accountability group or something, you know, like Gary, every month, he's been doing it for like 20 something years. He goes to lunch with one of his really great friends and also is both really focused, and they bring their balance sheets to breakfast once a month and share them, hold each other accountable. They talk about it, strategize, whatever, and then they just check in with each other throughout the month to make sure they're on track. So you can just have, like, even me, my health coach taught me a lot at the beginning, but now like it's just up to me to just go do it. But like me not having, or even just having to like know that I'm going to report to him, he doesn't care really, like whether I'm healthy or not. Like, yeah, I'm sure he cares, but like it's a different life, right? But like at the end of the day, me having to be accountable to someone dramatically changes my actions. Like I fill out my spreadsheet, I track my food, I track my stuff. But I took like a 3-month break from him. So I'm like, I'm in a groove or whatever. Stopped everything. It's weird. Okay, back there.
I'm gonna start with my bucket list. Go backward. Because I've just done 1 year.
Cool. Sweet.
I think this is my numbers. Bucket list backwards.
Know your numbers. Great.
I'm gonna set goals for the first time in my life.
Yes. Good.
I always say I'm gonna do that, I don't do it. Because I don't think it's that important, and it obviously is, because I'm not doing anything. I set goals for my fitness, and I sign up for my classes ahead of time, because if you don't show up, or if you cancel in 8 hours, you get charged $10. You're already paying a fortune. For Orange Theory, for Orange Theory, and so I need to do that in my business life and the rest of my life,
Cool.
because it works.
So you're gonna send them in your personal and your business life.
Yep.
Okay. Then you're gonna send them to Miss Thomas right here at the end of next week.
Okay.
Yeah. In the back.
I'm gonna go think bigger because I'm just starting out.
Good. Yeah, just get engaged in the office, like just come to everything, come to all the classes, come to team meeting, just like, for me, it's not always necessarily about like, am I gonna extract value out of that meeting? It's about an energy creation and just, KW has been my family. Like as soon as I even get off track, KW people are the people that pick me up. And it's the more you're interacting and surround yourself with people, like KW is just awesome. Yeah.
No, I didn't question this one. I was like, I don't want to go, do I not want to go?
You wanna go to everything.
Cool. Awesome. Good.
Well,
One more.
wow, that's impressive. What's going on there?
Well, just because you've helped so many people, like, what do you think? And you've probably just seen a lot of people from the mastermind you're talking about with Gary Keller to like coaching a new agent to 100,000 in first year. What do you think your big takeaways are for us shifting? Or
Besides all those slides I just showed you.
Like what makes some of our top people different?
what do you see as like, I don't know if this is the big bridge? Yeah, because it's like, I've heard all this before, a lot of it, not all of it.
That's why I
But
have
what
to
do you
keep
think
my
the
back. so it's
big
so
click thing is? We went to, what is it, Austin? You've heard a lot of this.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think, you know what I mean?
Take action.
Yeah, I think most of these are probably, most of them are probably like getting into the doing or the action component, right? They're probably strategies that you can implement. Some are maybe like internal, but I think one of the most underappreciated courses that Keller runs is the 6 personal perspectives. And actually it basically came out of Gary interviewing thousands of successful people, and he starts seeing common attributes that people show up from all these people, these top successful people. And that's actually where the content came for him to write that 6 personal perspectives class. And part of it is just they're some of them are really common sense, but they're so deep. And then part of it is going back to simple principles. Deeper is where success comes from. So even the 6 personal perspectives, you don't even know what they are, haven't been to them or memorized them like you should, because they can keep going deeper. Like one of the first ones is commit to self-mastery. Like one of the common attributes I see of very top people, they just commit to being awesome. like any industry, right? Like sports people, real estate agents, mortgage people, whatever. It's just like they have this inner desire to just be awesome and they're willing to do the work that it takes. Like just do not accept mediocrity. Number two is the whole 80-20 principle, right? It all comes down to time. Like smart, successful people use their time wisely, right? And I even went through a mental battle that I felt like the harder I worked, or the more hours of work I put in, I equated that to me being more successful or something. And again, it's just using your time more effectively and doing more stuff in less time. Like a lot of times, like people sort of get it, but when you really start adding more things to your life, you got to go deeper into figuring out how to use your time. And I think through my leadership positions and stuff like that, I just think I can get more done in an hour than most of our agents in 5 hours. Because you just have to commit to purpose on stuff, Another one is just staying learning based, staying open, like we kind of talked about. Another one is just the difference between being accountable and being a victim. You remember that chart in 6 personal perspectives, like it is hard to always be extremely accountable, and even understanding the different language patterns of a victim and someone that's accountable is totally different. So I think going back to that course is definitely helpful, And again, choosing your prophets wisely, like just find some sort of person that you think's kind of got the whole package in that area of life and follow them, ask questions, dig deeper, or whatever. You might not have them as your mentor for all of them, like Warren Buffett's a great financial guy. I don't think I'd go get relationship advice from him, or whatever. That's one thing I've actually enjoyed about Keller Williams leadership is like, I just have never seen a collection of people that have a commitment to so many other areas of life, like health, or even the way that Gary talks about parenting with his kid, John, like that kid had to have been the most taught kid in lifetime, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But just, surround yourself with successful people who have a commitment in every area of life to just be great,
Well, and that, I just want to say thank you for doing this, because he's one of those leaders. I mean, look at all the stuff you have, and you came here for 2 hours to talk to us, and only 8 people showed up. I want to apologize for that. But
some of the best classes I teach, like wealth building, mindset, stuff like this, it's so weird. Like it's always the least attended classes. For some
Really?
reason. Yeah.
But I just want you to know we appreciate it, because I know that your time is very valuable, and I know it takes a lot to come do this.
Yeah.
It's on there,
Yeah.
other people do.
Oh, we charge you. Yeah. We collect.
Oh, you're gonna bill.
I'll tell you why though. Like, it's the same way even like Josh and me show up in this office. Shauna, Boyd, Tamara, Rich, a lot of the OGs.
You guys all have the same thing.
Well, it's
going
because
on.
we're so passionate about what Philly's done for us. Like, I think I'm smart, I do, but I'll tell you, 90% of where I'm at, I 100% just learn from being in Keller Williams. And that's why even when I would recruit or I would teach or something, like it's just true, authentic passion that I owe so much of my life to the company. And that's where when I see people just like coasting through Keller Williams, it just kind of like irritates me, because I'm like, you just have no idea what we could do for it,
But I mean, it is amazing. This company is amazing because of people like you and Josh and Lee and Boyd, because they're willing to spend their time,
Yeah.
as busy as they are, to come and to teach us.
Yeah, and the funny thing is every one of them were new in the system at one point, and the reason they are who they are is because the collection of hundreds of people are probably important to them. So just if everybody gives a little, nobody gives a lot, right?
It's amazing the people that it attracts, that this
Yeah.
company attracts, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see EXP do this. Just kidding. All right, anything else? Any other comments, questions?
Thank you.
Okay, I like your new carpet.
I didn't even totally.
Okay, see you guys.
Terrible. Yeah. You don't bring that back. What'd you say? I didn't notice. Oh. Well, it's the same